At 0530 hours on December 22, 1944, Oberst Heinz Kokut occupied a fighting position approximately 300 meters from American defensive lines surrounding Bastogne, Belgium. Kokut commanded the 26th Volksgrenadier Division, a formation of approximately 8,000 personnel equipped with organic artillery and attached armor elements. At 44 years of age, Kokut brought extensive combat experience from campaigns on the Eastern Front, including multiple siege operations against fortified Soviet positions. The tactical situation at Bastogne represented a critical juncture in Operation Watt des Rhine, Germany, as December 1944 offensive through the Ardennes region. Bastogne controlled a network of 7 paved roads radiating through the heavily forested terrain. Roads essential for moving armored formations and supply columns westward toward objectives along the Meuse River. German forces had achieved complete encirclement of the town by December 20th, isolating American defenders from reinforcement or withdrawal. If you appreciate detailed military history based on archival records and veteran testimony, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from today. The German situation appeared favorable by conventional military assessment. Kokut's 26th Volksgrenadier Division maintained positions on multiple sides of the American perimeter. Additional German formations, including elements from the 2nd Panzer Division, Panzer Lehr Division, and various Volksgrenadier units, operated in sectors around Bastogne or along approach routes. Combined German strength in the immediate area exceeded 40,000. Personnel with substantial artillery and armor support. American forces inside the perimeter consisted primarily of the 101st Airborne Division, supplemented by elements from various units that had retreated into Bastogne during the initial German breakthrough. Total defender strength approximated 18,000 personnel. The 101st Airborne Division, an elite parachute and glider infantry formation, possessed minimal organic heavy weapons compared to standard infantry divisions. The division's table of organization included no tanks and limited self-propelled artillery. According to standard military doctrine, documented in German and American tactical manuals, surrounded light infantry facing armored divisions with artillery support typically sustained defensive operations for 48 to 72 hours before combat effectiveness degraded to levels necessitating surrender. Kokut had observed this pattern during Eastern Front operations where encircled Soviet units either attempted immediate breakout or collapsed after several days once soldiers recognized their situation as hopeless. The 101st Airborne had reached Bastogne on December 19th via motor transport, arriving ahead of German encircling forces by approximately 24 hours. Division elements occupied hasty defensive positions around the town's perimeter, establishing fighting positions in frozen ground and coordinating fields of fire. The rapid deployment meant units arrived without adequate winter clothing, as the division had been resting and refitting in France when the German offensive commenced. Most personnel wore standard field uniforms inadequate for sustained operations in sub-freezing temperatures. By December 22nd, the siege's third-day conventional military analysis suggested American defensive capacity should be approaching exhaustion. Food reserves would be depleted or severely rationed. Ammunition expenditure over 3 days of combat would have consumed initial stocks. Medical supplies would be insufficient for continued casualty treatment. Morale should be declining as soldiers recognized their isolation and the apparent hopelessness of their situation. Kokut's observations contradicted these expectations. His division had conducted multiple battalion and regimental strength assaults since December 20th. Each attack encountered organized resistance that maintained coherent defensive positions despite artillery preparation and combined arms assault tactics. American machine gun positions continued operating after German artillery strikes that should have suppressed or destroyed them. Infantry in foxholes maintained fire discipline and accurate shooting rather than exhibiting the panic or ammunition waste typical of demoralized troops. The 101st Airborne Division's command structure at Bastogne operated under Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, who assumed temporary command when division commander. Major General Maxwell Taylor was in Washington for consultations when the German offensive began. McAuliffe brought extensive experience from previous airborne operations, including command of division artillery during the Normandy invasion and subsequent campaigns. Defensive organization around Bastogne followed standard perimeter defense doctrine adapted to available terrain and forces. The perimeter extended approximately 16 kilometers in circumference, encompassing the town center and immediate surroundings. Division staff designated regimental and battalion sectors, with the 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment defending the northern sector, the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment holding the eastern approaches, and the 327th Glider Infantry Regiment covering southern positions. Additional units filled gaps and provided reserve capacity. Attached units significantly enhanced defensive capability beyond the 101st Airborne's organic strength. These included Combat Command B of the 10th Armored Division, which provided Sherman tanks and self-propelled tank destroyers. The 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion added towed anti-tank guns and M18 Hellcat tank destroyers. Artillery support came from the 101st Organic 907th Glider Field Artillery Battalion 75mm pack howitzers, plus attached units including the 969th Field Artillery Battalion 155mm howitzers, the 755th Field Artillery Battalion 155mm howitzers, and elements from the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion. The 969th Field Artillery Battalion merits particular attention as one of the few African American combat units to see frontline service during World War II. The battalion's 4 batteries operated M1 155mm howitzers, weapons weighing 13,500 pounds and firing 95-pound projectiles to ranges exceeding 14,000 meters. Throughout the siege, the 969th maintained continuous fire support, despite severe ammunition restrictions, with crews operating in sub-freezing conditions to deliver counter-battery fires and defensive concentrations. Material conditions inside the perimeter deteriorated rapidly during the initial encirclement period. Food supplies on December 19th consisted of whatever rations individual units had carried on vehicles during the hasty deployment. Division quartermasters estimated approximately 3 days of supplies at normal consumption rates. By December 21st, formal rationing reduced meals to 2 per day for most personnel. Some units implemented single daily meals to extend supplies. Soldiers supplemented official rations by foraging in abandoned Belgian structures, slaughtering livestock when available, and consuming whatever edible materials could be located. Medical capabilities were severely compromised when German forces captured the 101st Airborne Division's clearing station during the encirclement on December 19th. This facility had contained the majority of division medical personnel, surgical equipment, and pharmaceutical supplies. Remaining medical elements established aid stations in Bastogne buildings, operating with minimal equipment. Surgeons performed emergency procedures without adequate anesthesia supplies. Bandages were cleaned and reused multiple times. Wounded personnel faced elevated mortality from shock, infection, and complications that would have been preventable with proper medical resources. Ammunition management became critical as combat expenditure exceeded resupply. Artillery batteries calculated daily shell allocation based on remaining stocks and estimated duration before relief. By December 22nd, battery commanders restricted fire to 10 rounds per gun per day sufficient, only for defensive fires against confirmed enemy concentrations, eliminating suppressive fire and harassing missions. Infantry units rationed machine gun and rifle ammunition, emphasizing fire discipline and target discrimination. Squad leaders instructed riflemen to fire only at identified enemy personnel rather than engaging suspected positions. Despite material hardships, Unit cohesion and morale remained high according to after-action reports and veteran testimony collected by Army historians. Several factors contributed to sustained morale. First, the 101st Airborne personnel were volunteers who had specifically requested assignment to airborne units and completed demanding selection and training programs. Second, the division possessed extensive combat experience from operations in Normandy and Holland, giving soldiers confidence in their capabilities. Third, division leadership communicated confidence in eventual relief by advancing Allied forces. German artillery available for operations against Bastogne included organic divisional artillery from multiple Volksgrenadier divisions, plus Corps-level heavy artillery batteries. Typical Volksgrenadier division artillery consisted of 3 battalions, 1 battalion of 105 mm Lee FH-18, light field howitzers, 1 battalion of 150 mm SF-18 heavy field howitzers, and 1 battalion mixing 105 mm guns and 150 mm howitzers. Combined with Corps' artillery assets, German forces could mass approximately 150 to 200 artillery pieces for bombardment missions. German artillery doctrine emphasized preparatory fires before infantry assault. Standard procedure called for 15 to 30-minute bombardments targeting identified defensive positions, using high explosive shells with contact fuses for direct effects against personnel and field fortifications. Fire direction centers calculated concentrations based on map coordinates and forward observer reports, adjusting fires based on observed impacts. The first major German assault against Bastogne commenced December 20th at 1400 hours in the eastern sector near Bizery. According to Cocote's post-war statements documented in U.S. Army historical interviews, the attack began with artillery preparation targeting American positions along approximately 1,500 meters of frontage. 2 battalions from the 26th Volksgrenadier Division's infantry regiments advanced following the bombardment, supported by assault guns from attached armor elements. Artillery preparation proceeded according to plan. German forward observers positioned in concealed locations observed shell impacts bracketing American foxholes and fighting positions. Explosions fragmented trees, created blast craters, and generated smoke and dust obscuring the target area. Standard doctrine assumed such bombardment would kill or wound some defenders, suppress survivors, and disrupt defensive organizations sufficiently to allow infantry to close with minimal casualties. American defensive response contradicted German expectations. When German infantry advanced across open ground following the artillery lifts, they encountered immediate and sustained fire from multiple defensive positions. Machine gun teams that should have been suppressed or destroyed opened fire at ranges between 300 and 400 meters. Rifle fire from individual foxholes maintained accuracy and discipline. Mortar crews dropped rounds on pre-registered coordinates, catching German infantry in open terrain. The volume and effectiveness of American defensive fire during the December 20th assault surprised German commanders. After-action reports from 26th Volksgrenadier Division battalions noted that American fire discipline appeared unaffected by artillery preparation. Forward observers reported seeing American soldiers remaining in foxholes during bombardment, then immediately resuming fighting positions when German infantry appeared. This behavior contrasted with typical responses where soldiers sought deeper cover during shelling and required minutes to reorganize before effectively engaging targets. German casualties during the December 20th assault approached 180 personnel, according to division records. The attacking battalions withdrew by 1600 hours without achieving penetration. Unit commanders reported to Cocotte that American defensive positions remained fully operational, with no indication of reduced combat effectiveness despite the artillery preparation and assault. Cold weather injuries represented a significant attrition factor independent of combat action. Temperatures during the siege period fluctuated between -5 and -10 degrees Celsius, 23 to 14 degrees Fahrenheit at night, with daytime temperatures remaining near or below freezing. Soldiers occupying static defensive positions in foxholes faced sustained cold exposure that produced frostbite and trench-foot casualties. Frostbite occurs when tissue freezes due to prolonged exposure to temperatures below 0 degrees Celsius, particularly affecting extremities with reduced blood circulation. Trench-foot develops from extended immersion in cold, wet conditions even at temperatures above freezing. Both conditions were prevalent among Bastogne defenders who lacked insulated footwear and adequate cold weather clothing. Medical personnel treating cold injuries faced limited resources. Standard treatment protocols required warming affected tissues gradually, maintaining elevated temperatures, and preventing refreezing. Severe cases required amputation of necrotic tissue. Without adequate heated facilities or supplies for proper treatment, medical staff could only provide basic care. Soldiers with cold injuries remained in their positions, continuing to fight despite reduced mobility and chronic pain. Personnel adapted through improvised measures documented in unit journals and veteran accounts. Soldiers stuffed newspaper between uniform layers for additional insulation. They wrapped vegan burlap sacks over boots to reduce heat loss. Small groups huddled together in foxholes to share body heat. These measures provided marginal improvement, but could not prevent cold injury accumulation over days of static defense. Food scarcity compounded physical deterioration. Human metabolic requirements increase in cold environments as the body burns additional calories to maintain core temperature. Combat operations further elevate caloric needs. Under normal conditions, Army rations provided approximately 4,000 calories per day for soldiers in combat. Rationing at Bastogne reduced intake to perhaps 2,000 calories daily, insufficient for sustained operations in winter conditions. Physiological effects of caloric deficit include reduced endurance, impaired cognitive function, and degraded immune response. Soldiers operating on insufficient food experience decreased physical stamina for activities like digging, carrying equipment, or sustained marching. Mental sharpness declines, affecting reaction time and decision-making. Vulnerability to disease increases as immune function weakens. Despite these physiological stresses, combat effectiveness remained high according to German reports and American after-action documentation. Several factors mitigated the expected degradation. First, the defensive posture required less sustained physical exertion than offensive operations or forced marches. Second, the relatively short duration, 6 days, meant cumulative effects had not reached debilitating levels. Third, high morale and unit cohesion provided psychological resilience that partially compensated for physical deterioration. German assault tactics employed at Bastogne followed doctrine established through years of combat experience on multiple fronts. Standard attack methodology involved artillery preparation, infantry advance in waves, and immediate exploitation of any penetration. Supporting elements, machine gun teams, mortar sections. Assault guns moved forward with advancing infantry to provide suppressive fire. The December 20th assault against the Baiserie sector employed 2 battalions advancing on a frontage of approximately 1,500 meters. Battalion commanders positioned companies in assault formation, with lead elements advancing in loose skirmish lines, following companies echelon behind. Machine gun teams occupied firing positions to support the advance, with grazing fire across likely enemy locations. German infantry crossed approximately 300 meters of open ground following the artillery preparation. At 200 meters from American positions, they encountered coordinated defensive fire. The intensity and accuracy of this fire indicated that American defensive organization remained intact despite bombardment. Multiple machine gun positions engaged simultaneously, creating overlapping fields of fire that covered approach routes. Individual riflemen maintained aimed fire rather than panic shooting, conserving ammunition while inflicting casualties. German forces went to ground at approximately 150 meters from American foxholes, seeking whatever cover existed in the frozen farmland. Officers attempted to maintain momentum, ordering follow-on waves forward to exploit whatever progress the initial assault had achieved. Additional companies advanced through or around the pinned-down lead elements, attempting to close the final distance to American positions. At ranges below 100 meters, defensive fire intensity increased. American positions that appeared suppressed resumed firing as German infantry approached. Mortar rounds landed on pre-registered coordinates, catching German soldiers in the open. Casualties mounted rapidly. Officers and NCOs fell attempting to lead their men forward, disrupting unit cohesion and command structure. By 1600 hours, attack momentum had completely dissipated. German forces withdrew to their starting positions, carrying wounded and leaving some casualties in no man's land. Battalion commanders reported to Kokut that further advance was impossible without additional artillery, support, or different tactical approach. The American defensive line remained unbroken. Post-assault analysis by German staff officers identified several factors contributing to the failure. American artillery, though limited by ammunition constraints, effectively engaged German staging areas and approach routes. American machine gun positions demonstrated professional fieldcraft, remaining concealed until German infantry reached optimal engagement ranges. Most significantly, American soldiers maintained fighting positions throughout German artillery bombardment, resuming effective defense immediately when attack commenced. By December 21st evening, German higher headquarters directed Kokut to offer surrender terms to American forces at Bastogne. This decision reflected standard military practice when surrounding enemy formations. Isolated units, once convinced of their hopeless tactical situation, frequently accepted surrender to avoid unnecessary casualties. The surrender demand was drafted according to military protocol. German staff officers composed a formal ultimatum outlining the American tactical situation, noting complete encirclement, absence of supply lines, and overwhelming German strength. The document emphasized that further resistance was pointless and would result in unnecessary casualties. It offered honorable surrender terms consistent with international law and military custom. On the morning of December 22nd, German officers advanced to American lines under white flags of truce. They carried the written ultimatum and verbal authorization to negotiate surrender details. American frontline troops observed the approach and notified higher headquarters. Division staff arranged for blindfolded German officers to be escorted to a meeting point where the ultimatum could be formally presented. The German document reached McAuliffe's command post around mid-morning. According to multiple witnesses present during the incident, including Lieutenant Colonel Harry Kinnard, the division operations officer, McAuliffe, was sleeping after working through the night coordinating defensive preparations. Staff officers woke him to read the German demand. McAuliffe's immediate verbal response, documented by multiple witnesses, consisted of a single word expressing rejection in colloquial American English. He then returned to his interrupted rest. When staff officers requested clarification regarding the formal written reply, McAuliffe indicated he had not prepared one. Colonel Kinnard suggested sending exactly what McAuliffe had said as the official response. Other staff officers agreed this accurately conveyed the division's position. McAuliffe typed the reply personally using his portable typewriter. The complete text read, "To the German commander, nuts." The American commander, no elaboration, explanation, or signature accompanied this terse message. The single-word response represented a calculated communication choice, not informal casualness, but deliberate contempt for the premise that surrender might be considered. Colonel Joseph Harper, commanding the 327th Glider Infantry Regiment, received the task of delivering the reply to waiting German officers. Harper proceeded to the forward positions where German representatives waited under flags of truce, still blindfolded according to military protocol for emissaries in combat zones. Harper presented the typed message to the German officers. Lieutenant Helmuth Henk, one of the German representatives and English speaker, read the document with apparent confusion. The word "nuts" did not translate directly into military German, and its colloquial meaning was unclear. Hank asked Harper to explain what the American commander meant by this response. Harper's explanation, as later documented, involved clarifying that the message meant the same as "go to hell," a phrase whose intent was unmistakable. The German officers understood clearly that the Americans were refusing surrender in the most dismissive possible manner. They departed to report this development to their headquarters. The German command structure's reaction to the reply combined surprise, confusion, and anger. German military culture emphasized formal military communication and protocol. Surrender negotiations, even when declined, typically involved formal military language explaining the decision. The single-word colloquial rejection violated these norms and appeared to mock the German forces' situation. More significantly, the reply indicated something about American psychological state. Surrounded forces that genuinely feared annihilation did not respond to surrender demands with dismissive humor. The contemptuous tone suggested the defenders either did not understand their peril or, more troubling, did not consider their situation particularly threatening. This psychological assessment concerned German commanders more than the actual refusal. The nuts reply spread rapidly through both American and German forces. American soldiers learned their commander had rejected surrender in characteristically blunt fashion, reinforcing confidence that the division would hold regardless of circumstances. German troops heard they faced an enemy so confident that surrender was not merely declined, but treated as an absurd suggestion. Psychological impact on German morale proved significant. Soldiers preparing to attack, Bastogne faced an enemy that was not merely determined, but apparently confident of victory despite being outnumbered and surrounded. This knowledge affected individual and unit behavior in subsequent combat. German infantry advanced more cautiously, sought cover more readily, and displayed less aggressive initiative than doctrine prescribed. December 23rd brought a critical meteorological change. Weather over Belgium and northeastern France, which had been characterized by low clouds, fog, and poor visibility since December 16th, cleared suddenly as a high-pressure system moved into the region. Visibility improved dramatically, with clear skies and unlimited ceiling for aircraft operations. This weather change ended the temporary advantage low visibility had provided German ground operations. Poor weather during the initial offensive had prevented Allied tactical air power from operating effectively, allowing German armor and transport to move during daylight hours. Clear weather on December 23rd reversed the situation completely. American air operations commenced immediately. 9 Troop Carrier Command, responsible for airborne and air supply operations, had been preparing supply drops for Bastogne since December 21st, despite weather preventing execution. When conditions cleared December 23rd, 241 C-47 Skytrain transport aircraft loaded with supplies departed bases in France and England. The C-47 Skytrain represented the primary Allied transport aircraft. The military version of the Douglas DC-3 commercial airliner, the C-47 could carry approximately 6,000 pounds of cargo, or 28 fully equipped paratroopers. For supply drops, cargo was packed in padded bundles equipped with colored parachutes for identification. Different colors indicated different supply categories. Supply loads prioritized ammunition, medical supplies, and food. Ammunition bundles contained 30 caliber rifle ammunition, 50 caliber machine gun ammunition, 81 mm mortar rounds, bazooka rockets, and artillery shells. Medical bundles included bandages, sulfa drugs, morphine, plasma, and surgical supplies. Food bundles contained K rations, C rations, and other preserved foods requiring no preparation. The December 23rd supply drop delivered approximately 144 tons of supplies in 1,446 bundles. According to X-Troop Carrier Command records, drop accuracy exceeded expectations. Approximately 95% of bundles fell within American perimeter lines and were recovered despite German anti-aircraft fire. Some bundles landed in German-controlled areas and could not be retrieved, but overall recovery rate was exceptional. The psychological impact of aerial resupply matched its material importance. Soldiers who had been rationing ammunition and food for 3 days could now resupply to normal levels. Medical personnel received supplies for proper casualty treatment. The visible presence of Allied air power, hundreds of transport aircraft flying overhead in daylight, demonstrated that American forces retained operational capability despite German offensive gains. Simultaneously with transport operations, American fighter bombers from IX Tactical Air Command began attacking German positions around Bastogne. P-47 Thunderbolt fighters, armed with bombs and rockets in addition to machine guns, struck German artillery positions, armor concentrations, and supply columns. Without Luftwaffe opposition, American aircraft operated with virtual impunity. German commanders planned a major coordinated assault for December 25th, Christmas Day. This operation would represent the most substantial attack against Bastogne since encirclement began. The plan called for armored assault by 18 Panzer IV medium tanks from the 105th Panzer Grenadier Regiment, part of the 5th 10th Panzer Grenadier Division. Supporting infantry would accompany the tanks, with additional units positioned to exploit any breakthrough. The Panzer IV medium tank represented Germany's primary battle tank by late 1944. The version employed at Bastogne, likely the Panzer IV a USF, H or J, mounted a 75mm KWK-40L-48 main gun, weighed approximately 25 tons, and carried a crew of 5. Armor protection ranged from 50mm on the turret front to 80mm on frontal hull areas, adequate against most Allied anti-tank weapons at medium ranges, but vulnerable to close-range fire from tank destroyers or towed anti-tank guns. The attack axis approached from between the villages of Flamières and Cibret, targeting the northwestern perimeter near Hemrul and Champs. German commanders selected this approach based on terrain analysis suggesting less concentrated American defenses in this sector compared to eastern and southern approaches. The assault commenced at 0300 hours in total darkness. December temperatures were well below freezing, with frozen ground providing solid surface for tank movement. Visibility was limited to approximately 50 meters. The German column advanced in tight formation tanks, carrying infantry on hulls and decks, with dismounted infantry following close behind. American defensive preparations had anticipated this attack direction. Forward observers from the 327th Glider Infantry Regiment had identified likely German assembly areas and approach routes through reconnaissance on December 24th. Artillery. Batteries had registered guns on key terrain features and likely avenues of approach. Anti-tank guns. Both towed 57mm weapons and self-propelled M18 Hellcat tank destroyers occupied concealed positions covering the northwestern approaches. As German armor approached through pre-dawn darkness, American observers detected engine noise. Artillery fire was requested immediately through established fire direction procedures. Within minutes, shells began impacting on pre-registered coordinates. The shells employed proximity fuses, experimental devices that detonated automatically at preset altitudes above ground, creating airbursts that spread shrapnel across wide areas. Proximity-fused artillery proved devastatingly effective against infantry in open terrain. German soldiers riding on tank hulls were exposed to fragments raining down from overhead bursts. Many casualties occurred in the initial minutes of the artillery barrage. Infantry following tanks sought cover, but found little in the flat, frozen fields. The column sustained casualties but continued advancing. Stopping would accomplish nothing except providing stationary targets. At 300 meters from American positions, anti-tank guns opened direct fire. Tank destroyers and towed guns engaged simultaneously from hull-down positions, creating crossfire that bracketed the German formation. The first several Panzer IVs were hit immediately. One exploded spectacularly as ammunition stored in the hull detonated. Another lost its turret to a direct hit. A third suffered track damage and became immobile. Surviving tanks accelerated and dispersed, attempting to reduce their vulnerability through speed and maneuver. Tank commanders fired toward muzzle flashes, hoping to suppress American anti-tank weapons. The supporting infantry could no longer maintain pace with the tanks and became separated. Some infantry were pinned by artillery fire, others were already casualties, and remaining groups continued forward independently. Several Panzer IVs penetrated American forward positions and reached the vicinity of Hemrul. For a brief period, it appeared the attack might achieve a breakthrough. German tanks operated behind American frontline positions, engaging targets of opportunity. German infantry who had survived the approach consolidated in Hemrul structures, preparing to exploit the penetration. American forces counterattacked immediately. Junior officers and NCOs organized ad hoc teams equipped with bazookas and moved toward the penetration. The 2.36-inch M1I1 bazooka rocket launcher, while not reliably effective against frontal tank armor, could penetrate side and rear armor at close range. Bazooka teams maneuvered to engage tanks from flanking positions, targeting vulnerable areas like engine compartments and track assemblies. Close quarters fighting erupted in Hemrul as American and German infantry engaged in streets and buildings. Combat occurred at ranges measured in meters. American paratroopers employed grenades, rifle fire, and direct assault to clear German soldiers from positions they had momentarily seized. The fighting was chaotic and brutal, with both sides taking casualties in confused melees. Systematically, American forces destroyed or disabled the penetrating tanks. Bazooka teams worked methodically, one team firing while another reloaded. Infantry suppressed German tank crews attempting to escape disabled vehicles. By dawn, all 18 German tanks lay destroyed or abandoned. German infantry either surrendered, died fighting, or retreated through darkness. Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr. commanded the U.S. Third Army, which had been conducting offensive operations in the Saar region when the German Ardennes offensive began. On December 19th, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, directed Patton to disengage from current operations and counterattack northward into the southern flank of the German penetration. Patton's staff executed one of the war's most impressive logistical and operational achievements, pivoting 3 divisions, 90 degrees, and moving them approximately 150 kilometers in winter conditions while maintaining combat readiness. The 4th Armored Division, 26th Infantry Division, and 80th Infantry Division reoriented and began moving north on December 21st to 22nd. The 4th Armored Division, commanded by Major General Hugh Gaffey, received the mission of driving directly toward Bastogne. The division's 2 combat commands, Combat Command A and Combat Command B, advanced on parallel routes, fighting through German defensive positions established to block exactly this relief effort. Combat Command B, under Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams, followed a route through Arlon and toward Essenwa. Progress involved continuous combat against German rearguard positions, obstacles, and artillery fire. Tank infantry teams cleared towns and villages, eliminated anti-tank positions, and fought through successive defensive lines. By December 26th, Combat Command B approached Bastogne from the south. The final phase of advance targeted Essenwa, a village approximately 5 kilometers south of Bastogne. German forces defended this approach with anti-tank guns, infantry positions, and artillery support, recognizing that a breakthrough here would end the siege. The assault on Essenwa employed armor-heavy tactics appropriate for breakthrough operations. Sherman tanks led the advance, suppressing German positions with main gunfire and machine guns. Tank destroyers engaged German anti-tank weapons. Infantry followed in half-tracks, dismounting to clear buildings and eliminate enemy positions. First Lieutenant Charles Boggess commanded Company C, 37th Tank Battalion, leading the final drive into Bastogne. His Sherman tank, designated C-19 and nicknamed Cobra King, broke through German positions at Asenwa and continued north toward the Bastogne perimeter. At approximately 16:45 hours on December 26th, Bogus's tank made contact with American forces from the 326th Airborne Engineer Battalion, holding positions on the southern perimeter. The relief did not immediately end combat operations. German forces continued attacking the corridor, attempting to sever the connection and re-establish encirclement. Additional Third Army units moved forward to widen and secure the relief route. Combat continued around Bastogne for days as both sides fought for control of approach roads and tactical positions. However, the critical psychological moment occurred when Bogus's tank arrived. The 101st Airborne Division was no longer isolated. Supply lines could be established. Wounded could be evacuated. Reinforcements could arrive. The siege, in its essential character, had ended. Understanding the 101st Airborne Division's performance at Bastogne requires examining the selection and training systems that created these units. American airborne forces were entirely volunteer formations. No soldier was assigned to parachute units without specifically requesting such assignment and completing required training. The United States Army established its parachute training program at Fort Benning, Georgia, in 1940. Initial programs drew volunteers from existing units, with candidates undergoing selection processes designed to identify personnel suitable for airborne operations. Selection criteria emphasized physical fitness, mental stability, and demonstrated willingness to accept unusual hazards. Parachute training at Fort Benning followed a structured 4-week program documented in training manuals and regulations. Week 1 consisted of physical conditioning, extensive running, calisthenics, and obstacle coursework designed to build endurance and identify candidates who could not meet physical standards. Candidates ran multiple miles daily carrying full equipment, performed hundreds of push-ups and pull-ups, and completed increasingly difficult obstacle courses. Week 2 introduced parachute landing techniques through ground training. Candidates practiced landing falls from progressively higher platforms, learning to distribute impact forces across legs, hips, and shoulders. Training emphasized maintaining control during descent and landing, protecting equipment, and immediately preparing for combat after landing. Week 3 involved tower training using 34-foot and 250-foot towers. The 34-foot towers allowed practice in exiting aircraft and immediate parachute deployment. The 250-foot towers simulated full parachute descents, with candidates lifted to tower height, then released to descend under canopy. These exercises built confidence and allowed instructors to observe candidate performance under controlled conditions. Week 4 consisted of 5 live parachute jumps from C-47 aircraft at altitudes around 1,200 feet. Candidates executed individual jumps and mass tactical jumps, simulating combat conditions. Successful completion of all 5 jumps qualified candidates for parachutist rating and authorization to wear distinctive parachutist insignia, the silver wings worn above the left breast pocket. Attrition rates during parachute training exceeded 30% according to Training Command statistics. Some candidates withdrew voluntarily, recognizing airborne service did not suit them. Others were removed for inability to meet physical standards. Some suffered injuries during training that prevented continuation. A small percentage were eliminated for disciplinary or psychological reasons. The selection process's deliberate rigor served multiple purposes beyond identifying physically capable soldiers. It created cohesive units composed entirely of personnel who had voluntarily accepted exceptional risks and successfully completed identical training. Every paratrooper knew that every other paratrooper had made the same choice and met the same standards. This created mutual confidence that translated directly into combat effectiveness. The 101st Airborne Division activated at Camp Claiborne, Louisiana on August 16, 1942. The division consisted of 2 parachute infantry regiments, 501st and 506th, 1 glider infantry regiment, 327th, and supporting artillery, engineer, and service units. Unlike standard infantry divisions, airborne divisions were optimized for air deployment and light infantry combat, rather than sustained operations with heavy equipment. Division training extended through 1942 and 1943, with units conducting small unit tactical exercises, battalion and regimental maneuvers, and eventually division-level training problems. The training emphasized operations with minimal heavy support, rapid movement, and aggressive small unit tactics. Officers and NCOs learned to operate independently when separated from higher headquarters, a critical skill in airborne operations where units frequently became dispersed. The division deployed to England in September 1943, conducting further training in preparation for the planned invasion of France. Training included joint exercises with British forces, practice loading aircraft and parachute equipment, and rehearsals for specific missions anticipated during the invasion. The 101st Airborne's first combat operation occurred during Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944. The division's mission involved parachute and glider landings behind Utah Beach to secure causeways, capture key terrain, and disrupt German defensive responses. Approximately 6,600 paratroopers are during night operations, with additional personnel arriving by glider after daylight. Operations in Normandy demonstrated both the capabilities and challenges of airborne forces. Navigation difficulties and German anti-aircraft fire scattered paratroopers across wide areas. Many units landed far from intended drop zones, with individual soldiers and small groups conducting independent operations until they could link up with larger formations. Despite dispersion, the division accomplished key objectives and held positions against German counterattacks. Following Normandy, the division fought through Hérault country in northern France before returning to England in July 1944 for rest and refitting. This period allowed replacement of casualties, integration of replacement personnel, and additional training incorporating lessons from combat experience. Operation Market Garden, the Allied airborne assault into the Netherlands commenced September 17, 1944. The 101st Airborne S mission involved seizing bridges and towns along a corridor from the Belgian border to Eindhoven, creating a route for British the 30th Corps advancing toward Arnhem. The division jumped into defended areas, fought to capture bridges before German forces could destroy them, and held positions along the corridor despite German counterattacks. Market Garden failed in its strategic objective. British forces did not reach Arnhem, but the 101st Airborne accomplished every mission assigned. The division held the southern portion of the corridor against sustained German attacks, keeping supply routes open for British armor advancing north. By December 1944, the division had accumulated extensive combat experience across multiple campaigns. Veterans had experienced airborne insertions, fighting while scattered and isolated, operating under sustained enemy pressure, and maintaining cohesion when separated from higher command. This experience created confidence grounded in actual performance rather than training abstractions. German forces' experience at Bastogne created lasting psychological effects that influenced subsequent operations. Units that fought against the 101st Airborne carried institutional memory of that engagement, with officers and NCOs passing along warnings and tactical lessons to replacement personnel. Specific elements of the Bastogne fighting impressed German combatants. American defensive fire discipline remained consistent despite ammunition shortages, indicating professional training and leadership. American positions did not collapse under artillery bombardment. Soldiers remained in foxholes during shelling and immediately resumed fighting when German infantry appeared. Wounded Americans continued fighting rather than seeking aid stations. Officers led from forward positions rather than directing from safety. These observations accumulated into a composite impression. American airborne forces represented exceptional quality opponents who would not break under circumstances that typically caused unit collapse. German tactical planning began accounting for this assessment. Units preparing to engage American airborne forces requested additional artillery support, assumed longer timelines for achieving objectives, and anticipated higher casualties. The reputation spread beyond units that directly fought at Bastogne. German intelligence collected reports from multiple sectors, identifying patterns in American airborne performance. Wehrmacht training materials and tactical bulletins from early 1945 specifically addressed engaging American elite formations, recommending increased force ratios and warning against assumptions that standard tactics would succeed. Individual German soldiers absorbed these warnings and adjusted behavior accordingly. Infantry advancing against known American airborne positions moved more cautiously, sought cover more frequently, and demonstrated reduced willingness to press attacks when encountering resistance. This behavioral pattern documented in American after-action reports noting German hesitation and reduced aggressiveness provided American forces with tactical advantages in subsequent battles. Koko's post-war assessment, documented in multiple Army historical interviews, characterized the Bastogne fighting as the most difficult of his extensive combat career. He specifically noted that Soviet forces on the Eastern Front, while tactically skilled and often fanatically determined, typically collapsed once encircled and isolated from supply. The 101st Airborne, by contrast, maintained combat effectiveness and offensive spirit despite complete encirclement, severe supply shortages, and overwhelming German advantages in numbers and firepower. When asked what made American airborne forces different, Kokot emphasized psychological factors rather than equipment or tactical doctrine. He observed that the paratroopers at Bastogne fought with confidence that they would prevail, not hope or determination, but actual confidence in victory. This mindset created aggressive defensive tactics, rapid counterattacks against penetrations, and sustained morale despite material hardships. German forces, Kokot noted, were fighting opponents who genuinely believed they had already won and were merely waiting for German forces to recognize this reality. This psychological assessment reflected Kokot's broader conclusion about the war's trajectory. If the United States could produce thousands of soldiers of the quality demonstrated at Bastogne, volunteers, who specifically sought difficult assignments, completed rigorous training, and then performed exceptionally under extreme conditions, Germany could not prevail regardless of equipment quantities or tactical innovations. The war's outcome, he concluded, was determined not by material factors, but by qualitative superiority in personnel that Germany could not match. The 101st Airborne Division received formal recognition for its Bastogne defense through multiple awards. Division headquarters received the Presidential Unit Citation, one of the highest unit awards in American military recognition, specifically for actions from December 1944. The citation's accompanying streamer, embroidered with Bastogne, became a permanent part of division colors. Belgium awarded the division the Croix de Guerre with Palm for its defense of Belgian territory. Individual decorations included several medals of honor for specific acts during the siege and relief operations. Numerous silver stars, bronze stars, and other awards recognized individual courage and professional competence. However, most defenders considered survival and mission accomplishment as the ultimate validation of their performance. The siege lasted 6 days from complete encirclement on December 20th until relief on December 26th. American casualties in the 101st Airborne Division and attached units totaled approximately 3,000 personnel, including killed, wounded, and missing. German casualties around Bastogne exceeded this figure, though precise German loss figures remain uncertain due to incomplete records. Additionally, American forces destroyed or captured significant German armor and inflicted casualties on multiple German divisions that could not be easily replaced. Bastogne's strategic importance exceeded its tactical scope. The town controlled road networks essential for German offensive operations toward the Meuse River, By holding Bastogne, American forces denied German armor freedom of movement, creating massive traffic congestion on inadequate secondary roads. German supply columns could not reach forward units efficiently. Fuel shortages immobilized armor. The offensive lost momentum not through battlefield defeats, but through logistical collapse caused by one surrounded division holding a critical road junction. Hitler's insistence on capturing Bastogne, despite the time and resources required, diverted German forces from the offensive's main axes. Divisions that should have been advancing west toward strategic objectives were instead fighting siege operations they could not win. Each day the 101st Airborne held Bastogne was another day for Allied forces to reposition, bring up reserves, and prepare counteroffensives. General Eisenhower recognized Bastogne's importance immediately when the situation developed. His directive to McAuliffe, hold at all costs, reflected understanding that the entire German offensive's viability depended on capturing that road junction. The 101st Airborne delivered precisely what Eisenhower needed: 6 days of determined resistance that allowed Allied forces to stabilize the front and begin counterattacks that would ultimately eliminate the German penetration. Today, Bastogne remains a quiet Belgian town with population around 15,000. Town center features the Mardassin Memorial, a star-shaped monument dedicated to American forces that fought in the Ardennes. Streets bear names commemorating individual soldiers and units. December ceremonies annually remember the siege, with ceremonies attended by veterans when possible and by local residents who maintain memory of their liberation. The physical landscape has changed substantially since 1944. Foxholes have been filled, destroyed buildings rebuilt, damaged terrain restored. Occasionally, agricultural work uncovers artifacts, ammunition, equipment fragments, personal items, reminders that beneath peaceful farmland lies evidence of intense combat. The story of Bastogne is studied in military academies worldwide as demonstration of how determined, well-led forces can defeat numerically superior opponents through superior morale, tactical skill, and unwavering confidence. Officers analyze McAuliffe's defensive organization, ammunition management under scarcity, and maintenance of unit cohesion under extreme stress. The fundamental lesson transcends tactical details. At Bastogne, the 101st Airborne Division faced overwhelming material disadvantages, outnumbered 5-1, surrounded, without adequate supplies or reinforcement, yet maintained absolute confidence in victory. That confidence, grounded in training, combat experience, and mutual trust, proved more decisive than any material advantage German forces possessed. Confidence changes combat behavior fundamentally. Soldiers who believe they will win accept risks, press attacks, and endure hardships that would break formations lacking that certainty. German soldiers at Bastogne encountered an enemy that could not be defeated through standard military methods because that enemy genuinely did not accept defeat as a possibility. That psychological reality, more than any tactical innovation or equipment advantage, determined the battle's outcome.